Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our monthly ASEAN 2015 Challenges and Opportunities program in English. My name is Dr. Wilfried. As you know, I am the Executive Director of the Human Development Forum Foundation, a Thai registered non-for-profit organization. We are running a couple of programs on ASEAN 2015 in English, as well as some international strategic workshops. Our main topic today is ASEAN 2015 and shared history. The ASEAN community is around the corner, only a couple of months to go. Many people are dreaming from fast gains and financial advantages. However, as Europeans, we know that beside money, there needs more substance in a community. For example, common values based on a shared history. But in ASEAN, not many people care about this. Therefore, I invited today a very special guest who works with the UNESCO office in Bangkok, Mr. Tim Curtis. He definitely can give us some important inputs and ideas on new and old developments and some answers to burning questions. Good evening, Mr. Curtis. Welcome to our program, and please introduce yourself briefly.
Good evening, Wilfred. My name is Tim Curtis. I'm in charge of the Culture Sector Program at the UNESCO office in Bangkok, and we have a regional office that does a lot of work in ASEAN and throughout the ASEAN countries, as well as other areas of the Asia Pacific. And we are currently starting a project on shared histories. So it's a pleasure for me to be here and to speak to you about this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. This is the first short introduction, and we have now a short commercial break, and then we come back.
มันเป็นขยะแต่รู้ไหมว่าขยะเหล่านี้สามารถนำมารีไซเคิลเป็นสมุดสิ่งที่มีค่าสำหรับพวกเขาได้ด้วยแนวคิดการใช้ทรัพยากรธรรมชาติอย่างรู้คุณค่าและให้เกิดประโยชน์สูงสุดทำให้ดอนเมืองโทเวย์ได้เริ่มดำเนินโครงการสมุดกรีนเวย์โครงการเพื่อยกระดับสิ่งแวดล้อมให้คงอยู่ชั่วลูกชั่วหลานตราบนานเท่านานโทเวย์กรีนเวย์
คูปองดิจิตอลทีวีกสทช.มาแล้วค่ะคูปองครับต่อดูดิจิตอลทีวีที่เขาบอกว่าคูปองดิจิตอลทีวีมาแล้วครับ
วันนี้คูปองมูลค่า690 บาทใช้แลกกล่องเซ็ตท็อปบ็อกซ์หรือเป็นส่วนลดซื้อทีวีดิจิตอลได้ที่ศูนย์จำหน่ายที่มีสัญลักษณ์โครงการ
อย่าลืมอ่านก่อนแล้วเตรียมเอกสารให้ครบนะครับ
แจกแล้ว42จังหวัดภายในสิ้นปีนี้ดิจิตอลทีวีดูดีทุกบ้าน
บริษัท IRPC จำกัดมหาชนพร้อมก้าวสู่ผู้นำด้านปิโตรเคมีและการกลั่นครบวงจร
Welcome back to our ASEAN 2015 Challenges and Opportunities full English program. Today's main topic is ASEAN 2015 and shared history. So without further delay, let's jump into the topic. Tim Curtis from the UNESCO office in Bangkok will try to clarify some major questions and topics related to this area. So my first question is, in this context, can you please explain what is shared history?
Well, actually we talk more about shared histories than shared history. Because it's a concept we chose which covers many things, but mainly it's acknowledging that the history that is taught, the events that happen are interpreted and experienced from many perspectives, and that what we're trying to get away from is a way of teaching history which is just privileging one perspective over the other, to encourage dialogue. Because we can see that the way history is taught can also create negative stereotypes and imagery of others, and can contribute to tension, political tensions and conflict. This process has also been called before disarming history.
Disarming history.
Disarming history is
Disarming.
another term that people have been used to trying to review how history is being taught, and it has been done in some parts of the world. As you said, I think for the idea of an economic integration can't happen without reviewing a little bit. How are you teaching about each other to the next generations? What are the effects of that? You know, so this is part of why we're launching on this project at the request of some of the member states of UNESCO, who are also member states, of course, of ASEAN. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think interesting is that you say we talk about histories.
Yeah.
So what are, in your idea, are the main obstacles of political implementation of a shared histories or shared history of ASEAN?
There are obstacles, there are technical obstacles to teaching, which are different curriculums, different ways of teaching. But I think, as you implied, the biggest challenge is the political willingness. We know that history is often taught within the context of nation building, citizenship, national identity, and these things can be okay and are needed. But when they're done in a kind of winner-loser presentation of history, whereby, you know, ancient battles are continually rehashed as victorious moments of one over the other, or other peoples may be seen as our traditional enemies, that can pose a problem for economic integration, for peace. And so political willingness, the political desire to move forward is probably the biggest challenge in terms of doing this. And then we have all the technical issues. But the technical issues are not as difficult or as important, if you will say, I will say, as the political willingness to do this. So you know, at the decision-making level, are countries willing to review how they teach history? This was a decision that was made between France and Germany, for example, in the 1950s. Prior to that, generations were taught that the others were their enemies and would always be their enemies. And we see today France and Germany at the epicenter of the European Union. But this is a generational project, you know, and so that's an example. So for ASEAN, it's not the same context as Europe. It's not coming out of a major conflict. It's not all of these things. But nevertheless, there are issues that have come up over the last few years and longer, which are clearly also being fueled by each country's vision of its own particular national history, often sometimes in an antagonistic manner to the neighbors, which may be the great victories of one country or the other country that felt it was unjustified in some great past. The idea is not to eliminate those histories, but to understand them from the multiple perspectives and to try to move away from stereotyping. Because ultimately that is what the foundation of ASEAN will be. It will not only be economic trade. Economic trade can only happen when you also have a degree of trust and a degree of stability and peace. Yeah.
Okay, if I look at the three pillars from ASEAN 2015, so we have the political security, we have the economic community, and then the social cultural community. So your project would be rather centered in the social cultural, but with cross links to both others, because political security is influenced as well as economic. But how you do it practically, or how is your idea to do it practically?
Okay, so what we're doing practically, and it's a modest, I mean, we can't change everything. Curriculum change is very difficult in schools, and anybody who works in education will tell you that there's lots of issues around defining a history curriculum. And particularly when you start talking about 10 countries coming together to do this. So what we've done is we've already had a couple of expert meetings with top historians from all ASEAN countries to discuss how we might approach this. And then we're setting up a technical advisory committee, which will comprise of both historians and educators, education specialists, to devise modules and teaching modules. We also have the issue that history is taught at different levels in different ways, in the Philippines, to Indonesia, to Thailand, to Myanmar, to Cambodia. So we don't have one single entry point. So we will develop modules that countries may use to attach to their existing teaching to try to teach about the concept not only of ASEAN but of Southeast Asia, and to try to understand their history from that perspective of the region. So they will be teaching modules, teaching training. We will look where we can fit in at the existing curriculums rather than try to review the whole curriculums. So the idea is to start with small practical steps over the next few years, but this is a sort of never-ending project. It will continue afterwards.
And how is your cooperation with Samio on that?
We are working very closely with CMEO. We have already had endorsement at the high-level meeting of the CMEO Ministries of Education meeting. We are bringing it to the Ministers of Education table. We've the CMEO Secretariat have been attending all our meetings and working closely with us. So it's very much a partnership with CMEO. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, if I look at the Minister of Education, this is obviously normally not a big problem. But going to the political decision making, in many countries it's either the Prime Minister or the head of state who make the final decision. Do you have any kind of approach to get these people in the boat to help with this Shared Histories project?
Well, at this level we are working with the Ministries of Education. The Ministers of Education themselves report to their various prime ministers. They make decisions within their portfolio. So we are essentially aiming at that level because this is where it is happening. But those discussions are happening, no doubt, within the countries and also within ASEAN. But we haven't at this stage specifically targeted prime ministers to get involved in this. But we assume that when a Minister of Education is making a decision, it's in consultation with the Cabinet and the Prime Minister of the country.
We hope so.
We would assume so, yes.
Okay, and if we now think we look for the project further down, if it's established and if it's learned or trained in the school, what would be the effect for the normal people in the daily life? Is there any kind of feeling?
If we think of an economic integration, what does that mean? It means people move across borders, they work with each other, they have to start working with each other. If people are walking around having been taught that such and such a people are our enemies, or these people this, or this, and these kind of images through the teaching of history have come out, that's going to play out negatively in people's attitude towards each other. So really, ultimately, there's not going to be an immediate effect on the everyday life of people, but the idea through a generation is that people will not see each other through the eyes of distrust and antagonism, but start understanding each other better where they're coming from. And again, I think we look to the France-Germany thing. A generation ago, a French and a German would not, or a couple of generations. Today, we see they don't see each other as enemies anymore. That's finished. But there was a deliberate effort to review how history was being taught about each other. And without wanting to go into details, these issues are there in some of the ASEAN countries. There are ways history is being taught about neighboring countries which is negative. Both, let's say, more ancient history and sometimes more recent history. So for the sake of future generations, if there is to be a harmonious integration, this needs to be addressed, we believe at UNESCO, And in fact, not only we, but many others from ASEAN countries have asked us to help with this.
So you say contemporary history and ancient history. So what is somehow the starting point for ASEAN? I mean, contemporary history, ASEAN would be 1967 plus the development to this founding, and ancient, where you start.
Well, the project we are involved on isn't only about ASEAN as the institution, so that would be 1960. We're actually looking at Southeast Asia, okay, of which ASEAN is a very important development. So we are putting together these technical advisory groups, and we've had an expert meeting where they've outlined a kind of agenda of how